Here it is at last, the encounter with reality, I muttered, rushing headlong down the stairs. This is no longer the Pope leaving Rome and going to Brazil. This is no longer a ball on Lake Como. What a scoundrel you are, raced through my head. To laugh at that now. What of it, I cried, answering myself. All is lost now. Their trail was already cold, but no matter. I knew where they had gone. By the porch stood a lonely Jack, a night coachman in a homespun coat, all dusted with the still falling wet and as if warm snow. It was steamy and stuffy. His shaggy little piebald nag was also all dusted with snow and was coughing. I very much remember that. I rushed to the bast-covered sled, but as I raised my foot to get in, the recollection of the way Simonov had just given me the 6 rubles cut me down, and I dropped into the sled like a sack. No, much must be done to redeem it all, I cried out. But I will redeem it, or perish on the spot this very night. Drive. We set off. A whole whirlwind was spinning in my head. Beg for my friendship on their knees. That they won't do. It's a mirage, a vulgar mirage, revolting, romantic, and fantastic. Another ball on Lake Como. And therefore, I must slap Zverkov's face. It's my duty. And so it's decided. I'm flying now to slap its face. Faster! The Jack started snapping the reins. I'll do it as soon as I walk in. Ought I to say a few words first, as a preface to the slap? No, I'll just walk in and slap him. They'll all be sitting in the drawing room, and he'll be on the sofa with Olympia. Cursed Olympia. She laughed at my face once and refused me. I'll pull Olympia by the hair and Zverkov by the ears. No, better by one ear, and by that ear I'll lead him around the whole room. They'll probably all start beating me and kick me out. It's even certain. Let them. Still, I slapped him first. It was my initiative, and by the code of honor, that's everything. He's branded now, and no beating can wash away that slap. But only a duel. He'll have to fight, yes, and let them beat me now. Let them, ignoble as they are. Trudolyubov especially will do the beating. He's so strong. Ferfitchkin will fasten on from the side and certainly grab my hair, that's sure. But let them. I'm ready for it. Their sheep's noddles will finally be forced to grasp the tragic in it all. As they're dragging me to the door, I'll cry out to them that in fact they're not worth my little finger. Faster, coachman, faster, I shouted to the Jack. He even jumped and swung his whip, for I shouted quite wildly. We'll fight at dawn, that's settled. It's all over with. It's all over with the department. Ferfitchkin said department earlier instead of department, but where to get the pistols? Nonsense. I'll take an advance on my salary and buy them. And the powder and the bullets? That's the second's affair. But how will I manage it all before dawn? And where will I find a second? I have no acquaintances. Nonsense, I cried, whirling myself up even more. Nonsense. The first passerby I speak to in the street is duty-bound to be my second, just like pulling a drowning man from the water. The most eccentric situations must be allowed for. Were I to ask even the director himself to be my second tomorrow, he, too, would have to agree out of knightly feelings alone and keep the secret. Anton Antonitch... The thing was that at the same moment I could see more clearly and vividly than anyone else in the entire world the whole, most odious absurdity of my suppositions, and the whole other side of the coin. But, faster, coachman, faster, you rogue. Master, said the backbone of the nation. I suddenly felt cold all over. And wouldn't it be better to go straight home now? Oh my God, why? Why did I invite myself to this dinner yesterday? But no, impossible. And that 3-hour stroll from table to stove? No, they and no one else must pay me for that stroll. They must wash away that dishonor. Faster! And what if they take me to the police? Would they dare? They'd be afraid of a scandal. And what if Zverkov should refuse the duel out of contempt? That's even certain. But then I'll prove to them. Then I'll rush to the posting house as he's leaving tomorrow. I'll grab him by the leg. I'll tear his overcoat off as he's getting to the coach. I'll fasten my teeth on his hand. I'll bite him. See, all of you, what a desperate man can be driven to. Let him beat me on the head, and the rest of them from behind. I'll cry out to all the public, see, here's a young pup going off to charm the Circassian girls with my spit on his face. After that, of course, everything's over. The department has vanished from the face of the earth. I'll be seized. I'll be taken to court. I'll be thrown out of work, put in prison, sent to Siberia, exiled. Who cares? 15 years later, I'll drag myself after him in rags, a beggar when I'm let out of prison. I'll find him somewhere in a provincial capital. He'll be married and happy. He'll have a grown-up daughter. I'll say, look, monster, look at my sunken cheeks and my rags. I lost everything, career, happiness, art, science, a beloved woman, and all because of you. Here are the pistols. I've come to discharge my pistol, and and I forgive you. Here, I'll fire into the air, and no more will be heard of me. I even began to weep, though I knew perfectly well at the same moment that all this came from Silvio and from Lermontov's masquerade. And suddenly I felt terribly ashamed, so ashamed that I stopped the horse, got out of the sled, and stood in the snow in the middle of the street. The Jack watched me with amazement and sighed. What was to be done? To go there was impossible. The result would be nonsense. To leave things as they were was also impossible, because the result would then be, Lord, how can I leave it? After such offenses? No, I exclaimed, rushing back to the sled. It's predestined. It's fate. Drive on, there. And in my impatience, I hit the coachman in the neck with my fist. What's with you? Why are you punching? The little peasant cried, lashing the nag, however, so that she started kicking with her hind legs. Wet snow was falling in thick flakes. I uncovered myself. I didn't care about it. I forgot everything else because I had finally resolved on the slap and felt with horror that it would happen without fail now, presently, and that no power could stop it. Desolate street lamps flashed sullenly in the snowy haze like torches at a funeral. Snow got under my overcoat, my jacket, my necktie, and melted there. I didn't cover myself. All was lost in any case. We drove up at last. I jumped out, almost unconscious, ran up the steps, and began knocking at the door with my hands and feet. My legs especially were growing weak at the knees. The door was opened somehow quickly, as if they knew I was coming. Indeed, Simonov had forewarned them that there might be one more, and they had been forewarned there and generally to take precautions. This was one of those fashion shops of the time, which have long since been done away with by the police. During the day, it was actually a shop, and in the evening, those who had references could come and visit. I walked with quick steps through the dark store into the familiar drawing room, where only one candle was burning, and stopped in perplexity. No one was there. Where are they? I asked someone, but of course they had already had time to disperse. In front of me stood a person with a stupid smile, the hostess herself, who knew me slightly. A moment later, the door opened, and another person came in. Paying no attention to anything, I was pacing the room and, I think, talking to myself. It was as if I had been saved from death, and I joyfully sensed it with my whole being. For I would have slapped him. I would certainly have slapped him. But now they're not here, and everything's vanished, everything's changed. I kept looking over my shoulder. I still could not grasp it. Mechanically, I glanced at the girl who had come in. Before me flashed a fresh, young, somewhat pale face with straight, dark eyebrows and serious, as if somewhat astonished eyes. I liked it at once. I would have hated her if she'd been smiling. I began to study her more attentively, and as if with effort. My thoughts were not all collected yet. There was something simple-hearted and kind in that face, yet somehow serious to the point of strangeness. I was certain that it was a disadvantage to her there, and that none of those fools had noticed her. However, she could not have been called a beauty, though she was tall, strong, well-built. She was dressed extremely simply. Something nasty stung me. I went straight up to her. By chance, I looked in a mirror. My agitated face seemed to me repulsive in the extreme. Pale, wicked, mean, with disheveled hair. Let it be, I'm glad of it, I thought. I'm precisely glad that I'll seem repulsive to her. I like it. Somewhere behind a partition, as if under some strong pressure, as if someone were strangling it, a clock wheezed. After an unnaturally prolonged wheeze, there followed a thin, vile, and somehow unexpectedly rapid chiming, as if someone had suddenly jumped forward. It struck 2. I came to my senses, though I had not been asleep, but only lying there half oblivious. The room, narrow, small, and low, encumbered by a huge wardrobe and littered with cartons, rags, and all sorts of cast-off clothing, was almost totally dark. The candle butt burning on the table at the other end of the room was about to go out, barely flickering every now and then. In a few moments, it would be quite dark. I want to read that again. I love that setting. The room, narrow, small, and low, encumbered by a huge wardrobe and littered with cartons, rags, and all sorts of cast-off clothing, was almost totally dark. The candle butt burning on the table at the other end of the room was about to go out, barely flickering every now and then. In a few moments, it would be quite dark. It's a wonderful moment of inner space. Wonderful little naive symbolism moment of inner space. It did not take me long to recover myself. Everything came back to me at once without effort, instantly, as if it had just been lying in wait to pounce on me again. And even in my oblivion, there had still constantly remained some point, as it were, in my memory that simply refused to be forgotten, around which my drowsy reveries turned heavily. Yet it was strange. Everything that had happened to me that day seemed to me now, on awakening, to have happened long, long ago, as if I had long, long ago outlived it all. There were fumes in my head. Something was as if hovering over me, brushing against me, agitating and troubling me. Anguish and bile were again boiling up in me and seeking a way out. Suddenly I saw two open eyes beside me, peering at me curiously and obstinately. Their expression was coldly indifferent, sullen, as if utterly alien. It gave one a heavy feeling. A sullen thought was born in my brain and passed through my whole body like some vile sensation, similar to what one feels on entering an underground cellar, damp and musty. It was somehow unnatural that these two eyes had only decided precisely now to begin peering at me. It also occurred to me that in the course of 2 hours I had not exchanged a single word with this being, and had not considered it at all necessary. I had even liked it for some reason. But now, all of a sudden, there appeared before me the absurd, loathsomely spiderish notion of debauchery, which, without love, crudely and shamelessly begins straight off with that which is the crown of true love. We looked at each other like that for a long time, but she did not lower her eyes before mine, nor did she change their expression, and in the end, for some reason, this made me feel eerie. "What's your name?" I asked curtly, so as to put a quick end to it. "Liza," she replied almost in a whisper, but somehow quite unpleasantly, and looked away. I paused. "The weather today, the snow, nasty," I said almost to myself, wearily putting my hand behind my head and looking at the ceiling. She did not reply. The whole thing was hideous. "Do you come from around here?" I asked after a minute, almost exasperated, turning my head slightly towards her. "No." "Where then?" "From Riga," she said reluctantly. "German?" "Russian." "Been here long?" "Where?" "In this house." 2 weeks. She spoke more and more curtly. The candle went out altogether. I could no longer make out her face. "Do you have a father and mother?" "Yes." "No, I do." Where are they? There, in Riga. What are they? Just what? What are they socially? Tradespeople. You were living with them? Yes. How old are you? 20. Why did you leave them? Just meant let me alone. This is sickening. We fell silent. God knows why I wouldn't leave. I myself felt more and more sickened and anguished. Images of the whole past day began to pass confusedly through my memory, somehow of themselves, without my will. I suddenly recalled the scene I had witnessed that morning in the street as I was trotting along, preoccupied to work. They were carrying a coffin out today and almost dropped it, I suddenly said aloud. Not at all wishing to start a conversation, but just so, almost accidentally. A coffin? Yes, in the Haymarket. They were carrying it out of a basement. Out of a basement? Not a basement, but the basement floor, you know, down under from a bad house. There was such filth all around, eggshells, trash, stink. It was vile. Silence. A bad day for a burial, I began again, just not to be silent. Why bad? Snow, slush, I yawned. Makes no difference, she said suddenly after some silence. No, it's nasty, I yawned again. The grave diggers must have been swearing because the snow was making it wet, and there must have been water in the grave. Why water in the grave, she asked with a certain curiosity, but speaking even more rudely and curtly than before. Something suddenly began egging me on. There'd be water in the bottom for sure, about half a foot. Here in the Volkovo, you can never dig a dry grave. Why not? Why not? Such a watery place. It's swamp all around here. They just get put down in the water. I've seen it myself many times. I had never once seen it and had never been in the Volkovo cemetery, but had only heard people talk. It makes no difference to you how you die, but why should I die? She answered as if defending herself. You'll die someday in just the same way as that one today. She was also a girl. She died of consumption. A Jill would have died in the hospital. She already knows about that, I thought, and she said Jill, not girl. She owed money to the madam, I objected, egged on more and more by the argument, and worked for her almost to the end, even though she had consumption. The cabbies around there were talking with the soldiers and told them about it. Probably her old acquaintances. They were laughing. They wanted to go and commemorate her in a pothouse. Here, too, I was laying it on thick. Silence, deep silence. She did not even stir. So it's better to die in a hospital, is it? What's the difference? Anyway, who says I'm going to die? She added irritably. If not now, then later? Well, and later. That's easy to say. You're young now, good-looking, fresh, so you're worth the price. But after a year of this life, you won't be the same. You'll fade. In a year? At any rate, in a year you'll be worth less, I went on gloatingly. So you'll go from here to somewhere lower, another house, a year later to a third house, always lower and lower. And in about 7 years, you'll reach the Haymarket in the basement. That's still not so bad. Worst luck will be if on top of that some sickness comes along, say some weakness of the chest or you catch cold or something. Sickness doesn't go away easily in such a life. Once it gets into you, it may not get out. And so you'll die. Well, so I'll die, she answered very spitefully now and stirred quickly. Still, it's a pity. For who? A pity about life. Silence. Did you have a fiancé? Eh? What's it to you? But I'm not questioning you. It's nothing to me. Why get angry? Of course, you may have had your own troubles. What's that to me? It's just a pity. For who? For you. Don't bother, she whispered barely audibly and stirred again. This immediately fueled my anger even more. What? I was trying to be so gentle, and she... But what do you think? Is it a good path you're on, eh? I don't think anything. And that's what's bad, that you don't think. Wake up while you have time. And you do have time. You're still young, good looking. You could find love, marry, be happy. Not all the married ones are happy, she snapped in the same rude patter. Not all, of course, but even so, it's much better than here, a whole lot better. And with love, one can live even without happiness. Life is good even in sorrow. It's good to live in the world. no matter how. And what is there here except stench? Phew. I turned to her with loathing. I was no longer reasoning coldly. I myself began to feel what I was saying and became excited. I already thirsted to expound my cherished, quote, little ideas, end of quote, lived out in my corner. Something in me suddenly lit up. Some goal appeared. Never mind my being here. I'm no example for you. Maybe I'm even worse than you. Anyway, I was drunk when I stopped here. I still hastened to justify myself. Besides, a man is no sort of example for a woman. It's a different thing. I may dirty and befoul myself, but all the same, I'm nobody's slave. I'm here, then I'm gone, and that's all. I've shaken it off, and it's no longer me. But let's admit that you're a slave from the first beginning. Yes, a slave. You give up everything, all your will. Later, you may want to break these chains, but no, they'll ensnare you more and more strongly. That's how this cursed chain is. I know it. I won't even speak about other things. You perhaps wouldn't understand me, but just tell me, no doubt you're already in debt to the madam? So you see, I added, though she did not answer me, but only listened silently with her whole being. There's a chain for you. Now you'll never get it paid off. That's how they do it. The same as selling your soul to the devil. Besides, how do you know? Maybe I'm just as unfortunate as you are, and so I get into the muck on purpose, from misery. People do drink from grief. Well, so I'm here from grief. Now tell me, where's the good in it? Here you and I came together tonight, and we didn't say a word to each other all the while. And only afterwards you started peering at me like a wild thing, and I at you. Is that any way to love? Is that any way for two human beings to come together? It's simply an outrage, that's what. Yes, she agreed abruptly and hastily. I was even surprised by the hastiness of this yes. So perhaps the same thought was wandering through her mind as she was peering at me just now. So she, too, is already capable of certain thoughts? Devil take it, that's curious. It's akin, I reflected, almost rubbing my hands. No, how can I fail to get the better of such a young soul? It was the game that fascinated me most of all. She turned her head closer to me, and it seemed to me in the darkness propped it with her hand. Perhaps she was peering at me. How sorry I was that I couldn't make out her eyes. I heard her deep breathing. Why did you come here? I began, now with a sense of power. And how good it would be to be living in your father's house. Warm, free, your own nest. And what if it's worse than that? A thought flashed in me. I must find the right tone. Sentimentality may not get me far. However, it merely flashed. I swear she really did interest me. Besides, I was somehow unnerved and susceptible, and knavery goes so easily with feeling. Who can say, I hastened to reply. All sorts of things happen. Now I'm sure someone wronged you, and it's rather they who are guilty before you than you before them. I know nothing of your story, but a girl of your sort certainly wouldn't come here of her own liking. What sort of girl am I? She whispered barely audibly, but I heard it. Devil take it, I thought. I'm flattering her. This is vile, or maybe it's good. She was silent. You see, Liza, I'll speak about myself. If I'd had a family in my childhood, I wouldn't be the same as I am now. I often think about it, no matter how bad things are in a family. Still, it's your father and mother, not enemies, not strangers. At least once a year, they'll show love for you. Still, you know you belong there. I grew up without a family. That must be why I turned out this way, unfeeling. I bided my time again. Maybe she just doesn't understand, I thought. And anyway, it's ridiculous, this moralizing. If I were a father and had a daughter, I think I'd love my daughter more than my sons, really, I began obliquely, as if talking about something else to divert her. I confess I was blushing. Why is that? She asked. Ah, so she's listening. You just would. Excuse me. I just would. I don't know, Liza. You see, I knew a father who was a stern, severe man, but he was forever on his knees before his daughter. Kept kissing her hands and feet. Couldn't have enough of admiring her, really. She'd be dancing at a party and he'd stand for 5 hours in the same spot, unable to take his eyes off her. He was mad about her. I can understand that. She'd get tired at night and go to sleep, and he would wake up and start kissing her and making the sign of the cross over her while she slept. He himself went around in a greasy jacket, was niggardly with everybody, but for her, he'd have spent his last kopeck. He kept giving her rich presents, and what a joy it was for him if she liked the present. A father always loves his daughters more than a mother does. It's a delight for some girls to live at home, and I don't think I'd even give my daughter in marriage. Why not? She said with a slight chuckle. I'd be jealous, by God. How could she kiss another man? Or love a stranger more than her father? It's even painful to imagine it. Of course, that's all nonsense. Of course, everyone will finally see reason. But I think before giving her away, I'd wear myself out just with worry. I'd reject one suitor after another. But in the end, I'd marry her to one she herself loved. To a father, the man his daughter falls in love with herself always seems the worst. That's how it is. Much harm is done in families because of it. Some are glad to sell their daughter and not give her away honorably, she suddenly said. Ah, that's what it is. That happens, Liza, in those cursed families where there is neither God nor love, I picked up heatedly. And where there is no love, there is no reason. Such families do exist, it's true, but I'm not talking about them. Evidently, you saw no goodness in your family since you talked that way. You're one of the truly unfortunate ones. It all comes mainly from poverty. And is it any better with the masters? Honest people have good lives even in poverty. Yes, perhaps. Then there's this, Liza. Man only likes counting his grief. He doesn't count his happiness. But if he were to count properly, he'd see that there's enough of both lots for him. Well, and what if everything goes right in the family? God blesses it. Your husband turns out to be a good man who loves you, pampers you, never leaves your side. It's good in this family. Oftentimes, even half mixed with grief, it's still good. And where is there no grief? Perhaps once you get married, you'll find out for yourself, but take just the beginning after you've married someone you love. There's such happiness at times, so much happiness. I mean, day in and day out. In the beginning, even quarrels with a husband end well. Some women, the more they love, the more they pick quarrels with their husbands. It's true, I knew such a woman. You see, she all but said, I love you very much and torment you out of love, and you ought to feel it. Do you know that one can deliberately torment a person out of love? Women, mainly. And she thinks to herself, but afterwards I'll love him so much for it. I'll caress him so that it's no sin to torment him a bit now. And at home, everyone rejoices over you, and it's good and cheery and peaceful and honest. Then, too, there's the jealous sort. He goes out somewhere. I knew one like this. She can't help herself. She jumps out at night and runs on the sly to see, is he there? Is he in that house? Is he with that woman? Now that is bad, and she knows herself that it's bad. And her heart is sinking, and she blames herself, and yet she loves him. It's all from love. And how good to make peace after a quarrel, to own up to him, or to forgive. And how good they both suddenly feel as if they were meeting anew, getting married anew, beginning to love anew. And no one ought to know what goes on between a husband and wife if they love each other. And whatever quarrel they may have, they shouldn't call even their mother to be their judge or hear them tell about each other. They are their own judges. Love is God's mystery and should be hidden from all other eyes, whatever happens. It's holier that way and better. They respect each other more. And so much is founded on respect. And if there was love once, if they were married out of love, why should love pass? Can't it be sustained? It rarely happens that it can't be. Well, and if the husband proves to be a kind and honest man, how can love pass? The first married love will pass, true, but then an even better love will come. Then their souls will grow close. They'll decide all their doings together. They'll have no secrets from each other. And when children arrive, then all of it, even the hardest times, will look like happiness. One need only love and have courage. Now even work brings joy. Now even if you must occasionally deny yourself bread for the children's sake, still there is joy, for they will love you for it later. So you're laying aside for yourself. The children are growing. You feel you're an example to them, a support for them, that even when you die, they'll bear your thoughts and feelings upon themselves as they receive them from you. They'll take on your image and likeness. So it is a great duty. How can a father and mother fail to grow closer? People say it's hard having children. Who says so? It's a heavenly happiness. Do you love children, Liza? I love them terribly. You know, there's this rosy little boy sucking at your breast. Now, what husband's heart could turn against his wife, looking at her sitting with his child? The baby is rosy, plump, pampered, sprawling. His little hands and feet are pudgy. His nails are so clean and small, so small it's funny to see. His eyes seem to understand everything already. He's sucking and clutching at your breast with his little hand, playing. The father comes up. He'll tear himself away from the breast, bend back, look at his father, laughing as if it really were God knows how funny, and then again and again start sucking. Or else he'll up and bite his mother's breast, if he's already cutting teeth, while giving her a sidelong look. See how I bit you? Isn't this the whole of happiness when they're all three together, husband, wife, and child? A lot can be forgiven for those moments. No, Liza, one must first learn how to live, and only then accuse each other's. With pictures, I thought to myself, I'll get you with these pictures. Though, by God, I had spoken with feeling and suddenly blushed. What if she suddenly bursts out laughing? What will I do with myself then? The idea infuriated me. I had indeed become excited towards the end of my speech, and now my vanity somehow suffered. The silence continued. I even wanted to nudge her. It's like you, she began suddenly and stopped. But I already understood everything. Something different was trembling in her voice now. Not sharp, not rude, not unyielding as before, but something soft and bashful. So bashful that I myself felt abashed, felt guilty before her. What? I asked with tender curiosity. But you, what? It's as if it's from a book, she said, and again something like mockery suddenly sounded in her voice. I was painfully twinged by this remark. It was not what I was expecting. I did not even understand that she was purposely assuming a mask of mockery, that this is the usual last device of a bashful and chaste-hearted person whose soul is being rudely and importunately pried into, and who will not surrender till the last minute out of pride and is afraid of showing any feeling before you. I should have guessed it from the very timidity with which she ventured, haltingly, upon her mockery before she finally brought herself to express it. But I did not guess, and a wicked feeling took hold of me. You just wait, I thought.